and welcome to week 4. This week's topic is culturally diverse literature. It is one of my favorite topics in children's literature, but as you know, I love children's literature, have a passion for it, and love all the topics we talk about. Anyways, you're viewing the video, so that's the first activity almost done. The second activity will be our social emotional learning activity. This week you're going to select a blank slide from this slide presentation here. You're going to identify it as your own. You're going to select 2 social, emotional, cultural anchor competencies. You worked on some of those last week. You can pick 2 different ones of the same. This is the framework here. And what's different this week is you're going to select 2 competencies, but you're going to then post some resources or some ideas, not of your own, but from this wonderful framework guide, and you will see so many resources for each of the anchor competencies. It's a wonderful, wonderful tool to use, and what I'd like you to do is to create a slide. You might need to create 2 slides, and you can add additional slides if you need to, but you're going to create 2 ideas from each of the anchor competencies you picked out of the 8 competencies that there are. Now make sure that your slide identifies you as the author and that you have made it visually appealing. You can use images to represent the ideas with a brief explanation. Just make it creative, and the slide presentation has been started by me, so you can click on that. That's the activity for your social emotional learning, and as you know, and that I've talked about before, the social emotional learning curriculum in your classroom is equally, if not more important than the academic curriculum, because the research has shown that if your students have a social emotional learning curriculum and are following your expectations in your classroom, their academics will be higher than if you did not create a curriculum for social emotional learning and develop those skills. This week, of course, your literacy circle will discuss your culturally diverse book. I'll be excited to be a part of that. You're going to view this book or video of the sandwich swap, and then you're going to read the article below, drawing their lines in the sandwich. How does this book touch on questions of multiculturalism as suggested by the author of the article? How do the illustrations help the text to touch on the questions of multiculturalism? What did you experience once you read the book? Post your response in this Dropbox. Now, this story is considered a multicultural, which is part of the culturally diverse literature. There are 4 categories. This is one. This is really, we call it multicultural, but it's really literature from parallel cultures. Another category is literature exploring sexual orientation. The third category of culturally diverse literature is literature that explores exceptionalities. And exceptionalities, I mean like giftedness or students or people with disabilities. And the last one is global literature. That may be a book written in another language. It may be written in English, but in another country. It may be published in another country in another language other than English. It could be published here in that original language, or it could be published in the United States with characters or settings that are foreign, or it could also be like our Batchelder books that we haven't discussed yet. That is a book that was published and written in another language and then translated to English. So there are 4 categories, and the metaphor I love to use with culturally diverse literature is that when you are reading culturally diverse literature, you're actually using mirrors and windows. Mirrors are what the reader sees themselves, their culture, in, and windows where the reader sees themselves in another culture and learn about that culture. As you read the textbook, and you will see along the way in the articles, we have not had a lot of culturally diverse literature. It's much, much more culturally diverse now. We're excited about that, but we're going to be talking about that this week, and that's been a concern, but it is now a growing trend that authors of that culture are writing more about their own culture. But that leads us to another issue that you'll see in just a few minutes. So again, here is the video for the sandwich swap, and here is the article. You're going to take a look at those four cultures those four categories I just talked about, and you're going to view the PowerPoint presentation on cultural diversity. The four categories of cultural diversity are identified as I just identified. You're going to locate images or synopses of 2 books from each category, and you're going to create a document of your selection. You're going to post that document in this Dropbox. Now, the other issue that I just brought up is, what do we do with authors that have written about a culture that are not of that culture? Is there authenticity in that fact that they can write about a culture without being of that culture? One of our authors, Eve Bunting, who has written many, many wonderful, wonderful books, writes a book called A Day's Work. And in that book, she writes about a culture that you might be familiar with. So I'm asking, after you read this book or watch the video, do you think a book written by a cultural outsider such as Eve Bunting can still be authentic, valid, even if it has some inaccuracies? Use examples from this book to support your opinion. You may use the PowerPoint presentation information or articles from the group work, if you look at the group work, to support the examples you cite from the book. You're going to post your response in the Word document in this Dropbox. And last but not least, you're going to evaluate the authenticity of a children's book. And here are some simple questions to evaluate the authenticity. If you click on that, you'll see that. So using your multicultural book from your virtual discussion group, or any literature representing diverse populations, it could be from your self-selected library if you've been reading some of that. You're going to respond to the simple questions to evaluate authenticity. Determine if your book is authentically based on the questions you responded for this activity. Create a Word document. You're going to post that in the Dropbox. Those are the activities you will work on this week independently. There is group work also. I'm going to click on that folder so you can see that. I'm going to just play a little pre-music before I talk about the group work. So here are 4 articles that your group will read. Each person will select one article. They're based on the categories from the PowerPoint presentation. The best books can break down stereotypes the way we look at different cultures. These books can surprise us, whether they are close to home or abroad. They can change how we see ourselves. They extend the phrase, like me, to include what we thought was strange or foreign. So as a group, each member should select an article, read the article, and as a group, respond to the following questions. How did these articles help your group better understand cultural diversity? What information did you glean from the article that was new or interesting to you? What did you learn about teaching cultural diversity literature in the classroom? So have a discussion in your responses to these questions. Post a brief synopsis of your article so the others in your group will know what that article was about. You should revisit the textbook and reread pages 23 through 28 in order to include that information in your group's discussion. And you're going to post the synopsis by Wednesday and then discuss the questions posed above so that everyone will get a chance to discuss each other's articles. So you're going to respond to each other's articles, and then you will go back to your article and read what they've written. So this means, yes, you do have to check back a couple of times this week. And I'm hoping everyone will be in user integrity in making sure they get their article synopsis posted in time so people can comment on them. And that's by Wednesday. So I would suggest you do the group work immediately first, read the article first before you start your independent work. As always, if you have questions, please don't hesitate to ask me. Otherwise, I'll see you online, and I will also see you in Literacy Group this week.